Here it is, another episode of the Infinite Banter podcast. What is happening? My name is Mark Jolliffe, a.k.a. DJ Soundwave, or as my man Lou Temple from The Walking Dead says, DJ Boombox. Thanks for checking out the show. Really hyped for this one. We've got artist, teacher, visual thinker, the one and only Andrew Katz on the show to talk about his In Search Of videos and his artwork and so much more. Really hyped to talk to him because I do what a lot of us do. I go on YouTube, and sometimes I'm just looking for something to watch. And as you click things, YouTube knows what you like. So my YouTube is full of Run-D.M.C stuff and wrestling from the 80s. And just all kinds of things that I just tend to click on and watch. So one day I'm going on there and I see something that says In Search Of Run-D.M.C. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what is this? I clicked on it, and there's a video of this guy walking through a neighborhood in Queens and telling you, this is the house that Run was in. And he's got a tablet and he's walking around and he's lining up the pictures, the iconic photos with the real locations and showing you where they were shot and things like that. And I think it was about 15 minutes and I was just like, man, this is awesome. Like, I never thought of doing something like this, and went down that rabbit hole. And he's got a couple about the Beastie Boys and one where he's in London where many of the members of the Juice Crew had taken some iconic photos. And the most recent one, he took a trip to see where the Just a Friend Biz Markie video was done. And there's a lot I'm leaving out. There's so many good ones. There's a 3-part LL Cool J series. Go ahead and go on YouTube. Type in Delta Bravo In Search Of, and I guarantee you will enjoy these if you're a big hip-hop fan like I am. They're all really short. I think the Run-D.M.C one's probably the longest of all of them. But definitely looking forward to talking to Andy about those videos and much, much more. But as we always do on this show, before we go forward, before we start taking a trip with Andy to Queens and places like that, where some of our iconic favorite hip-hop crews and legends were born and raised, we go back to the last episode. And on the last episode of this show right here, the Infinite Banter podcast, we had my man Pinpoint from Baltimore talk about his new album with this crew called The Gods, Legends at the Dive Bar. And here we talk about, what do you drink at the dive bar? What's going on at that dive bar? So here we go, flashback, Pinpoint for the most recent episode of the Infinite Banter podcast.
Grand Marnier, that's like my go-to.
Oh, okay.
So if I'm somewhere and I don't trust the rail liquor and I just want to something that's gonna work fast but not and it tastes good, I'm a Grand Marnier guy, So I'm also not in my 20s or nowhere near it. So
yeah, right.
I gotta make my drinks count. They gotta make sense, bro. Like,
yeah. They gotta work. They gotta hit you right away, but not take you out of the game almost. Like, it's like that kind of thing.
I'm thinking about the next day on every drink, I'm like, man, what the fuck? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What's tomorrow? Like, yeah, that vibe.
And if you've not had a chance to hear that episode, definitely go back and check out my episode with Pinpoint. Had a lot of fun talking with him and talking about going to, sleazy bars and clubs to see a show or just to get something to drink and, they're playing some bad music, or sometimes you're surprised, to hear Wu-Tang. It's like, whoa, where am I at? This is the spot right here. This is not that dumb Caroline song. They're playing Method Man. There we go. Let's go. So this is the Infinite Banter podcast. You can check it out on all platforms. Rate and review the show. I definitely always beg you guys to do that. Go on Podchaser or Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, wherever you listen. If they have an option for you to rate it or give some stars, man, do that shit. Give this show its props. Do that if you get a chance. And if you go on Spotify, for a lot of these episodes, I have poll questions, that relate to that episode. So definitely interact with those. There's a Spotify playlist. I've been basically doing this for about a year and a half. Every musical guest that's been on this show, I have added a couple songs to this long Spotify playlist, which is growing to, I think it's somewhere like in the 15-hour range right now. So it's like everybody that's been on here that has a record out or ever made a record, they have a song in that playlist. So go check it out. Play it for 20 minutes. I guarantee you'll be feeling a lot of the songs in there, and they've all been heard on this show at one point or another. And you can find the show on all social media at Infinite Banter Podcast. And there is a YouTube channel. A few episodes are on there. You can check those out. Just type in Infinite Banter in the search. All right, let's get into it. Andy Katz is here. We're going to talk about the In Search Of videos and much, much more. Also, later on in the episode, I want to give props to a Tribe Called Quest. They are now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And since I did my last episode, not going to get into him that much, but O.J. Simpson passed. And I just have a funny story that made me think of him. The first thing that I thought of, for me personally, when he passed. I'll say that at the end of the episode here. No tributes or anything, just a little thing I thought was funny. So I'll bring that up at the end of the episode. But stay tuned. Andy Katz is here. Yeah, I usually introduce DMC to introduce the show, and I said we're going to go to Queens. Well, we're going to Queens because that's where those videos are filmed. And while Andy's walking around certain streets in Hollis, makes a stopover where DMC was, and DMC opens a door. He says this right here, and the show begins.
Yo, what's up? This is me, DMC, the K-I-N-G, the greatest MC in history. And right now, you're listening to Infinite Banter, because we will banter on forever, because this is the only place for all of y'all to ever be. I be Infinite Banter.
You're tuned into the Infinite Banter podcast. I am DJ Soundwave, and right now, I'm really hyped to be joined by my guest. You could see him in the Delta Bravo In Search Of videos where he goes on locations to iconic places where you've seen hip-hop pictures and photos and covers of albums from icons like Run-D.M.C, LL Cool J, the Beastie Boys, Juice Crew, you name it. And you can check out his artwork at katzart.com. Welcome to the show, artist, teacher, visual thinker. I'm probably leaving out some titles in there. The one and only Andrew Katz. What's up, Andy?
Hey, it's so good to actually talk to you.
Man.
I would say in person, but on the phone is good, and just to hear your voice other than me listening to your voice on the podcast.
Oh man,
I feel like I know you already because I've been listening to some of your episodes and checking out the people you've already talked to.
Man, likewise, and same here. When I'm watching these In Search Of videos, I'm feeling like it's kind of like I'm walking with you in Queens. When you're going to Run-D.M.C's beginning. So definitely appreciate you playing the podcast, and of course on my end, it's really cool just to see these locations. And I'll just give you a quick background on how I discovered your stuff. I was on YouTube, and sometimes I'm bored. I'm not gonna lie. I'm at work, I have nothing to do, and let me look on YouTube. And it's this thing. It said In Search Of Run-D.M.C. I'm like, what is that? I'm a Run-D.M.C head. It's my all-time favorite group, so that's not a hard sell for me. And I just hit play, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Talk about just the idea of doing this kind of work where you're going to these iconic, locations.
Oh, well, you said something already that really makes me feel great. And that is, you felt like you were there, like along with me,
right?
Walking with me, because really, that's what it's about. I don't pretend for a minute that I invented this or that I'm finding anything for the first time, but I sort of stumbled into this role because I got very enthusiastic about location visitation, and it all happened. It's kind of connected to hip hop, which is a beautiful thing. As a group, we were paying tribute to Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys. After he passed away, we were putting on this event in Brooklyn, New York called MCA Day, and it went kind of worldwide. And in our experience, we would have people show up. Mike Kearney was who's become a very good friend of mine, founded MCA Day in May of 2012. After Yauch passed, he drove down from Boston to Manhattan and stood on the corner in Union Square and played Beastie Boys music and invited people to share their experiences. And he had some chart paper and a boombox, and he ended up attracting quite a few followers. And then I heard about it the day after, and I was like, oh, I would have been there for that. And it turned out that we started putting on an event in Brooklyn every year after that. And what would happen was all these different hip-hop dignitaries would come through, and they would perform for us at no charge. We kept the event free every year. And so DMC was there one year, and Chuck D was there one year. And Danny O'Connor from House of Pain was a big Beastie Boys fan, and he came through the first 2 years.
Nice.
And when he did, it's like all these worlds started sort of converging and colliding. He brought with him his friends and a lot of people who had known him when he was in New York came out to see him. And he started talking about this thing like Delta Bravo. He had stickers, and I kept hearing it. And I was like, what are they talking about? And he's like, yeah, let's go to see where Adam Yauch went to high school. Let's go to the school where he went. Or let's go to where they filmed the Hold It Now, Hit It video near NYU. And I was kind of connected to the event, so I couldn't leave. And I saw this group of people just leave the event and go explore New York, which was very enticing for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to know more about this. And it turns out that Delta Bravo is called Delta Bravo because it stands for Danny Boy. He named it. It started off as a Facebook group where he was the only one posting. He would take contributions from people, but mostly he was traveling and he was exploring. And he had these, not rules, but sort of guidelines that if you were going to contribute something in a picture format, it would need to have his logo on it and maybe a little bit of information about where the location was. So this beautiful convergence of information started to sort of percolate, and everybody got real excited about it and started to throw all this stuff at him, all these different experiences and sites from movies and from hip hop and from album covers. We've all sort of done that, right? We've all like, oh, what was filmed here, and what was filmed there.
Right.
We just never knew what to call it. So when he gave us this kind of format and it was a community, it felt so good. So we all started to do that. And I went crazy with it. And a couple other people went crazy with it. And just every time you go on a family vacation or every time you travel to a new city, or you're like, what was filmed here? What music happened here?
Right.
What historical event happened here? And then bringing it back to the In Search Of thing. Like I said, I went a little crazy with it, and it happened to be that one of my friends from MCA Day, Nick Light, who's a video editor and director of documentary films, was on Facebook one day when I decided I was going to throw down the gauntlet and say, what I've always wanted to see, and I did this more to challenge myself because I wanted to do it. I didn't want to just say I was going to do it.
Right.
I wanted to do it. So I threw down the gauntlet.
You got to back up those words, Andy, right?
That's right. Publicly, right? When you do something publicly, you have to back it up. So I got onto a Run-D.M.C. Facebook group and I think the Delta Bravo Facebook group. And I was like, I'm going to go to Hollis this summer and find out where Run-D.M.C. came from and go see where all of these pictures I know so well were taken. And that's what happened. So I ended up throwing it down publicly. And Nick was like, hey, Andy, if you go, just give me 24 hours notice and I'll meet you there. I'm like, oh, man, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Right.
Like, okay, cool. But I didn't know he had any kind of grand plan. I just thought I was going to have a partner and we were going to walk around and find all these spots. And I was like, the more the merrier. That's great. So he's like, let's meet on, 205th Street in Hollis, where the Jam Master Jay mural is. And I'm like, okay, like I don't know anything about where I'm going, but I have Google Maps now, so let's go.
Right.
And what I didn't realize is that he was in Vancouver, Canada, which is 3,500 miles away from New York City or something like that. And I told him on a Wednesday, or Tuesday, I think I'm going to go tomorrow. I think I'm going. And he's like, well, I'll meet you there. And he, to his credit, I drove up, I'm from Maryland. It took me about 3.5 hours, maybe tops. And he flew from Vancouver to JFK.
That's nuts.
And then he picked up his friend who was a cameraman, and they met me on the corner just where they said they were going to meet me. And they had a camera with them and mics. And all of a sudden I was mic'd up and they were following me around, sort of seeing what I was going to see. We didn't have notes. We didn't have a plan. The only thing I did have was I knew where I wanted to go. I had all of the little flags on my map, and I'm like, all right, this is where Raising Hell was shot. All of the Glenn Friedman photos from behind one of the buildings. And then there was Jeanette Beckman photos in front of Russell and Joey's house. And it's so, having explored only digitally and virtually, to be there in person was amazing. And they documented all of it. And that turned into what you saw, which is In Search of Run-D.M.C. It's a 17-minute, what we call mini documentary. And that's the longest one that we've made. It was the first one.
Right. And
Nick decided, hey, like, we want to put out more content. We want to put more of these videos together. Let's keep them short. Let's make them under 10 minutes. So even if we're videoing or recording for 2.5 hours, we're still whittling it down to this bite-sized thing. And as a result, we've been able to kind of turn it around. I shouldn't say he's been able to turn it around.
Right.
Instead of a year, he turns it around in a couple of weeks or a month or maybe even a week sometimes. So we've done some pretty cool things together, and it's a brave new world. He's 3,000 miles away from me, and yet, we're working together. That wasn't possible, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Now it's,
yeah,
it's amazing.
And I would have to think too, like there's probably a lot of content because you are making, 10-minute videos, but you're shooting for 2-3 hours, like you said. There's some stuff that's left on the cutting room floor that maybe theoretically you could use, right, for something else or a part 2 or.
I hope so. Yeah. Sometimes there's like something that happens, and I'm like, oh, what happened to that part? That got cut. And I love that. But it's easy for me to say because I'm not doing all of the heavy lifting. I'm just showing up, and they're recording, and it's really turned into some amazing things. Like one of my favorite experiences is one that we call In Search of David Corio. And my family and I went to London in 2022. We went to London, and I had found these pictures. Actually, they're probably the most famous pictures of Biz Markie and the Juice Crew when they went to London for the first time. And if you ever see a picture of Biz Markie, like the most famous ones are him holding open his jacket and holding his medallion, sticking his tongue out. They were all taken that day in 1988 in London. And I found, just again, looking on Google Maps and doing what I try to do, which is kind of the detective work of finding a spot on a map, I was able to find where they shot it. But I did something new, which was I tried to reach out to the photographer. So unannounced, I wrote David Corio a note or an email, and I said, hey, I don't know. You don't know who I am, and I don't know if you're around. I don't know if you live in London or what, but I am coming to London. Is there any way you would entertain meeting me on the street and talking to me about this photo shoot from, all this time ago? And I just kind of sent it, not thinking I was going to hear very much. And he contacted me like 10 minutes later. He's like, yeah, sure. I'll do it. And I was so impressed that he was going to meet a perfect stranger on the street. And then I told Nick, I said, hey, he said he was going to meet me. And he's like, oh, well, let's send a camera crew. And I was like, no, I don't want to scare him
all the way to London.
Yeah, he doesn't know. Well, that's the thing. Nick is like this. He's plugged in. So he did exactly that. He contacted, I guess, in the industry, you just contact a hub of people and you throw out a job, and then these people jump at the chance. So they say, I'll show up for that. They don't know anybody. They don't know each other. They just know that there's a job. And so we all converged at 4 o'clock, or I think it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon that day. And I walked up to this spot on Kensington High Street, and David Corio walked up at the same time, and these two camera guys walked up at the same time. And we filmed for like 2 hours and made this 10-minute documentary of us finding out where Marley Marl was standing and where MC Shan and Big Daddy Kane and Biz Markie had their pictures taken in 1988. And it was a great experience. And now I have this really cool connection with David, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of keep that going.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I was going to say, is he known for any other pictures, hip-hop wise, or what else is he known for besides those?
He took a lot of pictures of dub reggae artists in the UK. He took a couple famous pictures of Bob Marley at one of the shows out there. In fact, I had him on a podcast once. I was interviewing him, and he told me of this really cool story about how he had to I guess there was a stage in the London area where the crowd is separated from the stage by a body of water. And he, as a photographer, had an all-access pass. So he waded into the water with his camera and was holding his camera over his head to get a shot of Bob Marley on stage. And he did get it. And it's
that's awesome.
Some of the adventures of the photographers are really intriguing to me. So,
yeah.
We've done quite a bit with the photographers. Like I've run down a few. Michael Benabib, Sean Murphy. Their photos are what's famous. You might not know the name, but you know their photos.
Yeah, last September. So I'm a huge LL fan, and Walking with the Panthers is one of my all-time favorite albums. Sometimes people kind of, I don't know, they don't give it the high regard that I do. Whatever, that's their problem. But anyway, I remember last year I was just re-obsessing that album, and I was like, who did this cover? I was curious, and I saw it was Ricardo Betancourt, and I'm like, I want to see if I can find him. Let me just do this, And I found him, and he was just like you did. I emailed him. He was more than happy to come on. He came on here. He talked for about 45 minutes, and he was giving me all these details about how if you look at the cover, like you could tell it rained that day, and he's talking about the cobblestone and the bricks, and he's talking about the girlfriend, and one was Russell's girl. I mean, stuff like there's no way you could just look at this album cover and know any of this stuff. without the guy who did it, and how one Panther was a little more, scarier than the other, and one was more docile. And seeing the photography through the photographer's eyes gives it just so much more depth and nuance. And like you're obviously found that out in London talking to him about.
Well, and that's the thing. Like you're doing what I'm doing. You get excited about that connection, and so Delta Bravo has been about connection for me. There's a lot of communities on Facebook. There's one called Historic Film Locations, and they have like almost 750,000 members, and it's almost too much. And there's a lot of rules and regulations about what you can contribute.
Right.
And that it's cool, but I really like the Delta Bravo crew because a lot of us have met each other at this point. We've gone to a city and say, hey, I'm part of this group. Like, you want to meet up? And I've traveled to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and met another member there. And we did all the Outsiders House stuff, which is what Danny Boy ended up doing. He ended up buying the Outsiders House from the movie The Outsiders, and he lives now in Tulsa. Instead of living in Beverly Hills, California, he lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he's found this sort of new life there. And it was all started because when he toured with House of Pain, he went on an excursion where he's like, hey, I wonder what was filmed here. I wonder, oh wait, the house is here, the Curtis brothers' house. And then he went and saw it, and it was kind of falling apart, and it was being rented by someone who couldn't have cared less about it. And then he ended up buying it and turning it into the Outsiders House Museum. And we went out there.
That's awesome.
And did all of the spots from that movie. But if I can back up your question about David Corio, I just remembered, when we share things, and this is how you and I are connected, you never know who's going to see it. So the idea of tagging people becomes really important. And so when I first went to London, I had found there were these 2 or 3 pictures of Public Enemy. And I think it was their first time out there in 1987 for the Def Jam tour, the one that they actually recorded and used the audio for It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back.
Oh, that's right. The little snippets in between the songs, right? Where you can hear bass in your face, London, right? Right, yeah.
That's right, exactly. Are you ready for the Def Jam tour? And this guy does it in English with the English accent.
Right.
Well, they filmed the Bring the Noise video in Hyde Park and right outside their hotel. So if you ever find that old video, David showed up to take pictures of them in Hyde Park. And then when I was there on my first trip, was 2019, I found the exact spot in Hyde Park where they took the pictures of Public Enemy. And when I posted them, I tagged David Corio, who I didn't know at the time. And he immediately said, hey, nice job. Like, well done. That's the same spot all these years later. And he didn't have to do that, but it was so cool. It's like you're meeting with the Walking with the Panther photographer. They could go one of 2 ways, right? They could be like, oh, leave me alone. I'm not interested, hands off my pictures. Or they could embrace it. And believe me, we've had people that have not liked what we do. We've been told, like, get your logo off my photo. and instead of mixing it up and saying, well, it really isn't your photo anymore, like, we changed it or we put our photo over top of it, it's not worth it to get nasty about it.
Right.
We just move on to the next thing. But when it works, when there's people who are to embrace it, it becomes this really rich experience. And I absolutely love it. I've had so much fun, and it's very rewarding.
Well, it was very amazing for me when I talked to Ricardo about that Walking with the Panther cover, how much detail he remembered, and it seemed like he started to remember more and more as he was talking. And I got that impression when you were in London, when you were talking to him about the pictures of Kane and Biz. He could remember so much detail about where they were standing and how much time they had, because you guys are talking about how they're just kind of coming one at a time out of the building and out of the recording studio, and it was just kind of like a bang bang, let's take these pictures real quick. And the idea that Kane was more, kind of laid back and wasn't trying to play too much to the camera, where Biz was more of, the clown of hip hop, right? So just hearing them still remember these moments, because for a lot of us, it's just snap a picture. We're in the society now where we have all our phones, are taking pictures, not really thinking twice about what we're doing, and we kind of move on. But so it's great to hear that they still remember these times of taking these iconic pictures.
I totally agree. Yeah, I agree. In fact, we have one in the can right now that's being edited soon. I'm a teacher. My full-time job is I'm a teacher, but I get, spring break and different breaks. And so because I'm within driving distance of New York City, I went on a break in February and I drove up to New York, and I sort of tried to invite myself into another photographer's world, and I didn't know what would happen. But there was a picture of Rakim with his foot up on the fender of a Mercedes-Benz, a black and white photo. It's a pretty famous photo of him, and
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the license plate says Benzito. It's in big letters, like he had named it this special car. And for the life of me, I couldn't find where it was. I tried being close to to Def Jam and Rushtown Records, and I was like, it's got to be around here somewhere. And I couldn't find it. All these different trips I went up, and I was like, well, let me just see if I can find out who took the picture and write them a note. So that's what I did. I found out that it was this guy, Michael Benabib, and I wrote him a note. I was like, Michael, is there any way you can tell me where this photo was taken? And, a minute later, he's like, Bleecker and Crosby Street. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I remember it cool. like it was yesterday. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so I went there, I matched it up. It's one of the regular mashups that I did. And later on, like more than a year later, I met Michael at an art show, an art gallery show that I was in with some of my artwork. And he's like, I have a treasure trove of pictures that never saw the light of day. It's like a time capsule of hip hop. And I was like, what? And I was like, can we ever see them? He goes, yeah, man. He goes, you should come to my studio and we can talk about it. And I thought he was just being nice, but I was like, yeah, okay, great. So a year later, I invited myself to his studio, and I walked in there, and I didn't have a cameraman, and I wasn't recording anything, but he was so nice. He opened up the door, and his house is his studio, and his studio is his house, and it's filled with photos from the late 80s, early 90s of hip hop on his walls, like framed everywhere, like Q-Tip and the Fugees and David Bowie and Miles Davis and like people that were outside of hip hop too. House of Pain and Run-D.M.C, David Byrne. It was like being in a museum.
It's crazy.
And I was like, Michael, can I come back with a cameraman? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. He goes, and you know what? What would be really cool is to go out on the street and find some of the locations that I shot. I'm like, wait a second, that's my line. I was supposed to say that to you.
Right.
So he was totally into it, So that was thrilling, and that's what ended up happening. That's what we recorded probably 3 weeks ago. I went up again, and we had a cameraman this time, the same cameraman that worked with us on In Search of Run-D.M.C, Frank Angelsic. And it was really bad weather, but we went up on the roof of his building, and he had taken pictures of LL Cool J up there, and Criss Cross, and Onyx with Run-D.M.C, just all on his roof, on his rooftop. And so he was telling stories. He had his laptop out. He's, you talked about David Corio remembering the day. Like he was telling us all of these little details about, oh yeah, like this is the picture of Usher in Times Square, and it was raining that day, so we got this really cool reflection on the ground of the wet pavement. And he said Aaliyah was really sweet about walking up to the 5th floor, even though there's no elevator, and she was one of the few people that didn't complain about it.
Awesome.
So all of these little nuggets of information are thrilling for someone like me. I just eat it up. I love it.
Yeah, and in a way, these photographers, they're kind of like the unsung heroes because they're making timeless prints, photos, cover art, whatever, that we're looking at. It's 2024. We're talking about stuff that's taken in the 80s, 90s, and we're still talking about it to this day. And they still, when you talk about that Rakim, I'm pretty sure I know what picture you're talking about with his foot on the fender there. I know what that is. I don't know who did it. I have no idea, but now I know because you're enlightening me, and to know that there's tons of other stuff, like a time capsule of hip hop and other genres. It's just blowing my mind right now. It's almost like going to Chung King Studios or something. Like just standing in the room of where the magic happened, right?
That I could go off on that because we had a crazy summer last summer. we ended up, a group of us that do this, we went to LA, and I went to LA for the first time in my life, but I went prepared because my buddy Rayanne Belshare, who is part of the Delta Bravo crew, and he has his own podcast and Instagram called Nerd Locations. He does this too. We went to LA just to explore everything LA that was sort of pop culture, and it ended up, we did a lot of that, but it came into focus that we started focusing on the Beastie Boys in LA.
Right.
So we hit all of the, and that's a lot of it's yet to be released. But one of the things on In Search Of that we have released is when we found the spot where the Check Your Head album cover was.
I
was
did see that video, and that's crazy to think about. Just some underpass, right, with cracked cement and nothing really that special.
Oh, yeah.
But it's an iconic cover, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really random in a way. They were just walking along. I guess they had met up at the Capitol Records building. It's like 2 blocks away from the Capitol Records building, and that was all Greek to me. But having been there now, I kind of have some context. But one of the crazy things that we were able to do, and it's all going to start coming out. We're going to release things in drips and drabs. But one of the things we did, 2 things that were just life changing. One of them, you brought up Chung King Studios. We went to G-Sun Studios.
Oh,
and
wow.
we had permission, which is really rare, but they knew we were coming, and they met us there, and they let us, they gave us carte blanche. They actually left us there by ourselves.
Is it an actual studio anymore, or is it just like an empty building? Like, what actually is it these days?
So because we did this and we've connected with them now, we found out that the building was going to be destroyed, and they were going to turn it into condos or something else. And it had been a studio up until that discussion happened. And this guy that we met, Adam, swooped in with his partner, and they bought it. And they were like, we want to sort of rescue this. We don't want this to be destroyed. They're Beastie Boys fans first and foremost, and they had a little bit of money to buy it. So they bought it, and it's still, it's kind of an event space now. So there are people that do yoga in there, and there's, they have weddings in there, and they have, but it's the basketball court's still in there, and the soundboard is still in there, and you can still record. So we went in there, and we were like kids in a candy store, just running around and playing basketball, and we were reenacting the Pass the Mic video on the back steps, which is really why.
Oh, is that where they filmed that too? That was back there? Oh,
and so we're huge Beastie Boys fans.
Playing dominoes, right?
That was a bucket list. Yeah, exactly. That was a bucket list spot for us. And I thought we would have to film it from the back gate. And instead we were invited in, and we came to the back from the top steps like they did, from inside the building. And it was unreal. So we were there for like 3 hours just playing around and videoing everything. And the next day we actually topped that experience. We went to, I'm not sure how much of a Beastie Boys fan you are, or how many people who listen to your podcast, but I like the Beastie Boys. But we are crazy about it. And there was a if you've read the Beastie Boys book, or if you know their history, they lived in a house when they filmed, when they recorded.
When they got the Capitol money, right? Yeah, they had that big glorious house, right, with all the clothes and everything in it. Yeah,
right. The Grasshoff's house, otherwise known as the G Spot, and we took a chance and we drove up there, and it's way back, like Mulholland Drive up in the hills, and it ends kind of at a cul-de-sac. It's like really up there. And I was like, there's no way we're going to get in. Why would they let us in? It's like 6 of us showing up in Hollywood. Why would they let us in? And so we walk up there, and we're prepared to, ring the doorbell and ask politely, but nobody was there. And we saw there was construction workers on the roof, and it turned out that they were working on the house that had been sold. And the guys waved us in. The construction workers thought we belonged there, and they waved us in, and we ran around like kids in a candy store again.
Wow.
But there's a famous Ricky Powell photograph that's underwater, that's part of the Paul's Boutique album.
Right.
And they're blowing bubbles up against the glass, and it's shot through this square window. So our goal was like, we have to find that window. And we all thought it was inside the house. And it is sort of, but it's on the other side of the pool from where the house is. There's a subterranean bedroom that's kind of like an extra room that's not in the house. And apparently that's where Ad Rock stayed. And that's where Yao could wake him up every morning by looking in that little window when they were living there. And Ricky Powell shot it. Well, so when we get there, we found for some reason the pool was filled with clean water, and we found the window. We went downstairs and we're photographing it and videoing everything. And my buddy Mike and my buddy Danny jumped in the pool, and we filmed them through the window.
Wasn't that also where Hey Ladies was filmed, or am I remembering that wrong?
Well, we all thought that was probably the case too, because that's a pool too, but it's not the same.
Okay.
There's like a mansion slash I don't know. I want to say it's not Hearst Castle, but it's something like that. Like, there might be one called First Castle, and it's a mansion that's not the same spot, but it looks similar.
Right. I remember, I don't know if it's in the Beastie Boy book or the documentary, but they're both kind of the same. They talked about how there's some old 70s clothes that were left in that house, and that's why they're wearing like bell bottoms and all the crazy stuff you saw them wearing during the Paul's Boutique era. Of course, and they realized they needed to save some money and go build the studio, which was the one you went to initially at the G-Sun place. Wow, I can't even imagine what it's like just to be standing in the room, because the music and just the ideas that were coming up in those walls. Yeah.
Well, Check Your Head was my favorite album by them. Might be one of my favorite albums ever by anybody. And that was all recorded at G-Sun, and so was Ill Communication.
Right.
So yeah, like just what you're saying, like picturing them playing the music and being in the space. It was wild for us. And I'm sure like not everybody's a Beastie Boys fan, but for the people who listen, conjure up your favorite group or artist and where the inspiration was found and where they were when they wrote the lyrics and then laid them down is pretty. It was intense. It was really intense and awesome.
And not to mention Q-Tip was there, cool. And Biz Markie was there.
Yeah,
Hurricane, of course. Right. All these guys. Yeah. So yeah, it's amazing.
Well, back to the In Search of, one of the mashups that I did of a new photo with an old photo is Biz Markie sitting on those back steps at G-Sun. And there's a great one of Adam Yauch walking up the steps sort of from behind where he's carrying his upright bass in a case. It's a beautiful photograph. It was probably wasn't even planned to be a beautiful photograph, but it's one of my favorites because it's him, and because he's got this bass with him. It's just awesome. The whole thing was great.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you're almost like a hip hop Indiana Jones archaeologist, right? Because you're just you're going to these locations, but who knows what you're going to find there, right? And you might have to dig a little bit. And it seems like for the most part, I'm sure there's some stories that are not always positive, but people are welcoming, right? They seem like they're letting you guys have some access that maybe you wouldn't normally get. So that's great.
Well, most often, people have been incredible. And that trip to LA, it was remarkable how I feel like the doors just opened for us in a way that we would never have predicted. I mean, the fact that there was clean water in the pool and the fact that we got invited to G-Sun, it's probably not as unique as we think. But when you're planning a trip like this, you're like, well, you expect to be stonewalled. Like, why would they let us in? Who are we? And then everybody's so generous. They're all excited that we're excited. So you're right. It's not always like that. And actually, some of the hate comes from people who are like, you didn't find this, you didn't discover this, and we never really claimed to.
Oh, I got you.
We never really claimed to do that.
Right.
But people are like, oh, we knew where this was. Well, okay, cool. I didn't, and I feel like I found it for myself.
Right. See, there you go. And that takes me back to one of my questions I was thinking about earlier was when you went to the Run-D.M.C. one and the LL stuff in Queens. The neighborhood felt like, neighborhood USA. Like, it didn't feel like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you might portray a hip hop artist to have, a neighborhood that's rough and tough or whatever. And it felt like any other neighborhood across the country. And I was wondering if people see you guys filming, like, hey, why are they by that house? Oh, I know why they're by that house. This is not something I've seen ever before. So I can't imagine there's a lot of people filming, Jay's old house or DMC's old house or their school or whatever.
Yeah, it's like you're kind of like a mind reader because that's exactly what happened. We were when we were walking up and down Hollis Avenue. It is a nice neighborhood. It's middle class, and actually LL Cool J's neighborhood.
Oh my God, the vibe from that video! It felt like I'm in the suburbs of Chicago. It felt like somewhere out here. It really didn't seem like it was Queens. Or at least the Queens I've heard about on record, I guess. Yeah,
I really liked it. Yeah, where his grandmother lived. I mean, there's some industrial parts of it, and then all of a sudden there's like these really nice lawns and well-kept houses. And it's a nice section, and it was a very livable place. And, just like any city, there's nice parts and there's rougher parts. But
Very true.
Hollis, I loved Hollis. And when we were walking around that day, like you have to understand, like I'm not really extroverted. I try to be really polite and kind and ask for permission whenever I can. But also, we had a drone with us and we had a camera, and there's somebody, they're following me around, and everyone's like, who the hell is this guy? and a couple of people, they look at you a little bit sideways, but as soon as they did, we'd be like, oh, we're here because we love Run-D.M.C. And it was like, that was the magic. That was like the password. People were like, oh yeah, that's Jay's house, or have you been to Daryl's house? And it's right around the corner. So
oh, wow.
I went in.
So you're almost getting like tips from them, like here's where else you should be going, around the corner here. Yeah.
People are really proud of it. I mean, there was a mural that we were filming. We were filming this mural that they had painted years later of Run-D.M.C. and really just anybody that was famous from Queens. I think Fife was on the mural and everything. And this woman comes out of the corner store. It was like a little store. I think it was called Dolly's. And we got it on video, but it wasn't part of it ended up on the cutting room floor like we were talking about earlier. But she came out and she goes, "What y'all doing?" And I said, we're big Run-D.M.C. fans, and we just wanted to see where they came from." And she goes, "Oh, well, see see this mural here?" And she's like, "There I am." And she points to herself, and she's in the mural too.
Oh, wow.
It was like this famous like corner store. So she was like a notable citizen as well. It was a really great moment, and people are many times just as excited or really proud of their community as you are to be there. You're excited to be there and celebrate. And I think it's, we're not making any money off this. We're just enjoying capturing this history and documenting and archiving.
Yeah, and I, as a fan, I've been in New York a couple times, but I haven't gone to Queens or the neighborhoods where you were at, and I'm kind of living it through you, and it's kind of making me. This should be, New York should be happy. It's making me I need to take a trip to New York. I need to go to these places now. I've never been to the Unisphere. I've never seen that either. I'm thinking about that one as well. I saw that video with the iconic Beastie Boys inside License to Ill, and of course it's been an award tour like you have in the video.
Yeah.
But man, I see these videos. I'm thinking like your attention to detail is something else too, because you're noticing like these little things like a chip in the brick or the tree, like in the Bismarcky Just a Friend location. The tree branch is still kind of dangling the way that it did 30 something years ago, and the bench would have been here. Are you surprised when you go to these locations that either A, it almost looks identical, or B, how much of it is a challenge sometimes just to find that spot? Because I'm sure it has to be, things have changed over 30 years, of course,
Well, I was really excited about the Bismarcky video that we just released, the Just a Friend one, because that wasn't even on my radar up until about a month and a half ago. I'm an artist, and I was in my studio making a painting, and one of my ways of working is I'll put on YouTube videos, like almost like use it as a jukebox. So I just type in like an 80s or 90s hip hop video that I want to listen to, and I'll just let it play all day while I'm working. Well, I was doing that, and the video for Just a Friend started, and I'm not sure if you remember, but at the very beginning of the video, they're all making fun of each other's mothers.
Oh, right, on the bench, yeah.
And there's no music playing yet. And of course, it's the lead up to him telling his narrative story. It's a story song, right? And so I look up at the screen, and they're sitting on this bench, and now I'm kind of conditioned to go, hey, where is that? Where was that filmed? And I just started going down this rabbit hole mentally. I'm like, I could probably find that. Looks like it's on like near a library or a school or a campus. And then, of course, he gets to the part where he's got the Mozart wig on that we all know. And he's belting out the lyrics, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no way is that like a sound studio? Where was that filmed? And I'm like,
right.
those windows, that doesn't look like a sound studio. That looks like an old building. I wonder if it's near where the bench is. So I went down this rabbit hole, and I couldn't find it for, I don't know, several days. I couldn't find any information. All I heard was it was on Long Island somewhere. And then finally I saw just a snippet of a sentence, and it said filming location, Long Island University. And I'm like, okay, game on.
There it is.
And so I made a plan. And I got really excited about it because I started digging around on Google Maps, and I found the campus. There's two campuses. One is in Brooklyn and one is in Brookville, which is a smaller town on Long Island. And I was like, that's about 4 hours from my house. All right, if I'm going to go up, I want to make sure at least one of these places is still there for me to document. So I called Nick and I called Frank, the cameraman, and I'm like, let's try to make this happen. And then I even wrote to the school. I was like, I would love to come up and explore your campus. And nobody got back to me. I wanted to do it on the level. I didn't want to just show up with a cameraman and
guerrilla style it, right? Yeah. Right.
It's a school,
Yeah.
You have to be careful.
Especially nowadays. Some guy walking on school grounds with a bag. All right.
Exactly.
Who is this dude?
That's exactly right. So you have to be careful. And so I didn't hear back from anybody. And finally, I heard back from one person, and they're like, yeah, if you want to film, you have to get a letter from the city of Brookville, and you have to rent the room. And I'm like, oh, I don't think they understand. I'm going to be there for 10 minutes. Like, I'm not going to do all that. So, and I said, all right, well, how much does it cost? And how about if I come up on this day? And then they never got back to me ever. They just never replied.
Right.
So I was like, I'm just going to try it. I'm going to just go up there. And I told Frank, the cameraman, I'm like, let's just not use a professional camera. We'll use just a camera phone, and we won't draw any attention to ourselves. And if someone tells us to leave, we'll leave and all that. And I told him, like, let's set our expectations really low. If they kick us out, we won't get anything. And he lives closer than I do. So he met me there. And sure enough, we walked onto campus and we found where the bench was. And the bench isn't there anymore, but we found the exact location where they start the video. And the sort of the money shot, the one that we really wanted, was going where Biz is wearing the Mozart wig. And it was in this sort of mansion in the middle of campus, this old Tudor style building. And I thought, all right, we're going to have to be slick with our story or whatever, and tell people what we were trying to do and have a good introduction. And it turned out we just walked in. The building was unlocked, and we walked in.
Crazy.
And we had pretty much all the time we wanted. And we filmed this whole documentary, and nobody even knew we were there. It was great, and it was just really amazing to see what we wanted to see and find what we wanted to find.
Unlike the song, there was no security guard there, and somebody didn't make you fill out a visitor's form. Like, you didn't have to do any of that stuff, right? You just kind of went in.
That's right. In fact, in the video where he had to fill out the visitor's form, the little guard booth is gone. Right. And the little driveway that he came in on is gone, but the archway that he's standing in front of is still there. So, all of, and when we make these videos, we want to play the song, but of course, copyright becomes an issue.
Right.
So Nick kind of finds some fun ways around that by playing snippets, or he had a great audio clip of Biz explaining the recording of that song, which was really cool to hear while I'm walking around trying to find the piano and trying to find
that's amazing too, that it was a more than likely, which the piano you did find is probably it, but even if it isn't it's something that was on the ground. It's not like they had a truck with a piano and all this stuff. You just kind of use what's there, and that's essentially what they were doing. And I love the overhead shots with the drone. I mean, that really kind of gives you a layout of everything, and that one in particular, you did a great job with that. And with the Google Maps, it really kind of helps me as the viewer see the location. It's like, wow, it just looks like a school. There's nothing that the video is so iconic and it's timeless. And they'll be watching this video years from now. But to think that it's just a school. It's nothing that elaborate, but it is. The way you filmed it, the way they did it, the way you filmed it, the way you guys document it, just amazing, man.
Well, thank you. And I have to give credit to Nick and Frank on that. I'm not the technical person at all, but I did say something, I think, in the film about how all of the kids that go to campus go to school there. None of them were born when that song was
they don't know what it
popular. They don't know who Bismarcky is, probably. And I guess that's where our job comes in. Is we want to make sure people aren't forgetting this cool stuff. And I'm like a little kid when I'm there. I'm like, this is thrilling for me. I'm a big nerd about it, but I love it. And there's something really exciting about connecting with something from our collective past.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and that's really what gets me going. And it doesn't have to be hip hop, right? I mean, we did the same thing. One of our videos is about Depeche Mode. We stumbled into this little bombed out church it was a twice bombed church in Southwark, London, and it used to be called Blackwing Studio, and that's where Depeche Mode got their start. And that was really cool because I didn't even know that existed.
There's so many iconic places, regardless of the genre, or even like you said with movies. I mean, I've been to Philadelphia, and my first thing I want to do was I want to run the Rocky Steps. I want to know where Rocky was. Or I did the closest I've ever done to what you do is when I was in Vegas. I went to the corner of what is it, Flamingo and Koval, where Pac was shot. I remember standing there and just like, I can't believe I'm standing in this. Like, this is crazy to me that this is where this happened. So like that's the closest I've ever been to something like that, and that's actually more tragic than just here's the house that DMC grew up in. But yeah, I mean
that's it. That's the same thing. It is. I mean, one of our members, Jimmy Ferrari, he gets really into what he calls mob hits. So anywhere that anybody from the mafia was killed, he'll go there and he'll document that. That's so crazy. Yeah, there's some morbid stuff, but he even visited like the Son of Sam's apartment and things like that. Like some of the things that are downright scary if you dig into the history. But we sort of look at it as, again, we're documenting and we're historians, I guess, in a way. And you said the Indiana Jones thing. I mean, that was something that Nick said in Search of Run-D.M.C. doc, where we're hip hop archaeologists.
There you go.
And I love that. I do love that. I like I said, the Delta Bravo is a lot more than hip hop, but I've sort of taken on that because I love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that a lot of us, of a certain age especially, we grew up on Run-D.M.C. and LL, Beasties, all that. And I started thinking, now you got me, like, my head was spinning. I'm trying to think of, like, all these other iconic photos. And just the other day I was thinking, like, what about that Houdini Escape cover when they're by the bars? I'm like, I wonder where that is. Maybe I should ask Andy if he knows about that one. Or
we could find it.
Or Pete Rock CL Smooth, where they're by the car, the classic Mecca and the Soul Brother cover. I mean, there's so many that I never looked at in the same way, or EPMD sitting on top of the cars by the waterfront. There's so many of these.
I know where that one is.
Oh, you do?
I know where that one is. Yes, that's out on Long Island. It's
there you go.
Yeah, so I think Jeanette Beckman took that photograph, and that's what's been really interesting. Again, is forging these relationships with the photographers, because Glenn Friedman is one of my favorite photographers, and
he's amazing.
He was just in the right place so many times, and not just once. Like, he documented early hip hop, but he also documented early skate culture, and he also documented early punk culture. He just was in the right city at the right time. So he took pictures in DC for punk. He took hip hop early photos of Public Enemy. Like every Public Enemy picture from the 80s that is Glenn Friedman or Jeanette Beckman. And they were just there, hanging around like the front of Def Jam Studios. So all of those pictures of the Beastie Boys and Stetsasonic, they're all right there on Elizabeth Street. So I go there every time I go to New York now, because it's just a building now. It used to be Def Jam headquarters, 298 Elizabeth Street. But a lot of those photographers at the time would just stand there out front and snap pictures of whoever was coming from signing their record deal.
That's crazy. And you brought up Public Enemy, one of my all-time favorite groups, and people go on your Instagram, they'll see that you recently ran into Chuck D because he was doing a benefit, right? Or he was doing a speaking engagement. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. We're like within 24 hours of that. Now, I have a little bit of a history with Chuck because I'm part of an artist collective that he's put together. What a lot of people don't know about Chuck D is that he's also a visual artist. And so we became connected through art first. Obviously, I knew his music, and I am a huge Public Enemy fan. And I was ready to go to a show in, I think, 2012 or 2013. And I was new to Twitter at the time. And I started to post my artwork of Chuck D going, he's going to play the 930 Club in DC, Public Enemy. I'm going to go see him. And I would post lyrics along with my artwork, and I would tag him and Public Enemy every time. And I did it like an obnoxious amount of times because I was getting excited about the show. And I didn't really understand how Twitter worked. It's kind of like that movie Chef, where I don't know if you saw that, but the guy's like, I just sent it to him and he saw it. And I'm like,
there you go.
Well, no, everybody sees it.
Right.
And so Chuck DM'd me, and he's like, "Hey, bro, DM me." And I was like, "What does that even mean?" Like, this is how naive I was. I was like, DM, what could that mean? And so I thought he was going to tell me, like, cease and desist, like, stop posting our lyrics.
Wow.
And instead, he's like, "Hey, I want you." I said, "Hey, what can I do for you?" Like, didn't just say, "Hey, you're my hero," but I was like, "What can I do for you?" And he's like, "I want you to come to the show, and I want you to be my guest." And I was like, "That's crazy."
Oh
He's
my
like,
God.
There's a couple things I want to talk to you about. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy." So that all happened, and when I talked to him, he's like, "I want you to keep doing what you're doing, like, tweet and put out lyrics and your artwork." He's like, "I'm a big fan of your art and I love what you're doing. Just keep doing that." I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "We can't pay you." And I was like, "Pay me?" Like, I would do that. I was doing that anyway. I'll keep doing it. Sure.
I'm still figuring out what DM means. I don't worry about the payment part. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I have a history of not being very cool, like in moments where I should try to act cool.
You're good.
My mouth's on the floor, like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening here?" But I sat there and I talked to him for a while, and he's like, "Hey, like, would you be interested in like helping us with publicenemy.com?" And so I ended up hosting publicenemy.com for 2 years. I wrote like content, and I posted all kinds of articles, and I formatted pictures, and I ran it pretty much for 2 years. It was pretty awesome. And they did pay me for that, which was really crazy, to get a check. Like, I wanted to take a picture and frame it of like the check that I got, because I was on like the Public Enemy payroll for 2 years, which is, it wasn't a lot of money, but it was who
whatever.
cares?
Yeah, whatever, right? I mean,
free.
it's almost like you're an unofficial member of like the S1Ws or something. You're part of Public Enemy now.
That's what I tell people. Yeah, but but Chuck and I like remained, in contact, and it slowly became this connection of talking about art. So we would call each other and we would talk about art, and it was amazing. So he'd come to town and he'd show me his sketchbooks, and I would talk to him about making prints and things. And he was very complimentary he was paying me the compliment of listening to my advice, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, and now he introduces me that way. So yesterday when I saw him in Frederick, he was with Pop Diesel, who's one of the S1Ws, and I met with them before they went to the venue, and he introduced me to Pop again. I've met Pop before, but they've met a lot of people. So he's like, "Yeah, this is Andy. He's one of my teachers." And he gives me this. Yeah, it is crazy, and I never know what to say. I'm always like, "Nah, come on," like, right. You're Chuck D.
Right.
But it's really amazing. He's been very generous, and so yeah, I met him last night again, and he signed some of the artwork. But it was cool because I was with some of my friends who really wanted to meet him also, and it was just a great event because he was just speaking. It wasn't like he was rapping or performing with music, but he's, I guess, what they call a thought leader now. Right. So that whole nickname. And I loved it. It was about 90 minutes away from where I live, but it's always great to see him, and very inspiring. And it's they say don't meet your heroes,
right?
But he really is somebody who steps up every time, and you're like, yeah, this guy's amazing.
And he should be on a stamp to play on words that Chuck has said. He's a hero that should be on a stamp. So salute to Chuck D. And it's funny because you say that about him calling you a teacher. Like me personally, like he shaped my my politics. He shaped things for me growing up and how I think now about things. So to think of him as calling somebody that he's been teaching a teacher, almost, it's like that's wild. And I know he's really interactive, and I posted some things, and he's actually like inbox. I was like, whoa, Chuck is in my DM. I don't know what to do. Yeah. This is crazy. Like, and like you said, I want to like tell him everything. Like, here's like a million things I think of you, everything that I learned from Public Enemy, but it's like, you gotta be cool. Like, hey, thanks, Chuck. I appreciate you. That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. You know how it is, right? Yeah. That's exactly how I feel.
Oh my God. Salute to Chuck D and Public Enemy. And before I let you go, I do want to bring up, speaking of, some of our idols, you had a chance to go down to DC for the National Hip Hop Museum and the induction ceremony, and Cool Rock Ski, who's been on this show twice, and they KRS-One and Shyrock, and man, just talk about that experience and everything going into that. I know that's probably a lot to answer, but
It is a lot, but I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I'm really fortunate. I've met some amazing people through art and hip hop, and just sort of showing up for show after show after show. And the reason I do that is usually because I bring art with me. So bringing art with me and getting it in front of the people who I've drawn or painted has increased the circle of people that I know. And so when I go to DC now and go to a show, like I'll see the same hip hop heads who are showing up for Rakim or De La Soul or J Dilla Day that they used to have. DC Loves Dilla. All this cool stuff. So I met a guy probably 10 years ago now named Jeremy Beaver, and he owned a recording studio right next to Howard University called WLVS, Listen Vision Studios. And we became fast friends because he's like, hey man, come out and you bring your art and we'll put you on one of our episodes where we talk about hip hop and art. I'm like, great. So he's very aspirational. He's all about, like, I think hip hop should be like jazz. It should be recognized by the Library of Congress. And
Right.
it should be given this important designation. And I want to have a museum. And we were all kind of waiting and shuffling our feet about, like, New York, because the 50th anniversary of hip hop was coming up, and there was no hip hop museum or hip hop Hall of Fame, no proper one. And they're building one in the Bronx called the Universal Hip Hop Museum, and now it's called the Hip Hop Museum. But it's a lot of work to do that, and it takes many years. So Jeremy, being the kind of person he is, was like, I don't want to wait. Like, let's just do this while everybody's alive still, and like, let's give them their flowers now.
Right.
And so he assembled this team and started collecting memorabilia, and he's just a really interesting, business savvy person. And honestly, I was doubtful. I was like, the things he's talking about doing, I don't know how he's going to pull it off. But he's like, let's have an induction with Rakim and Cool Mo D and Nice and Smooth, and we'll invite all of them and we'll induct them and we'll give them like plaques and medallions. And I was like, all right, Jeremy. And damn if he didn't do it. Like, he did it. And he doesn't even have a brick and mortar right now. It's just an idea, and he's been able to get all of these icons to show up. So he did that first, and then he's inducted Grandmaster Caz and inducted Kool Herc, and they've all shown up for all of this. And all of the photographers, Joe Conzo, who took hip hop's baby pictures, shows up to take pictures of the events. And it's, you name it, like somebody from, and he's also doing it to people who are maybe less known. So he's got the icons, like the other night we did KRS-One, and Cool Rock Ski was there and representing the Fat Boys, and Roxanne Shante, and they're all, we actually did that one at the RIA headquarters in Washington, D.C. So it was this beautiful backdrop. They have a really nice new building with a performance space. And every time we do this event, it becomes richer and better. And he'll always say, oh, you're the creative director, Andy. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do that job. But it's tough because all of the people involved have full-time jobs and families, but they're also all dedicated to doing this right. And so right now, we're all just trying to honor hip hop the best way we know how. So being there the other night was incredible, because KRS came down from New York, and to have his blessing, for lack of a better word, was everything. And so I was talking to Chuck about it last night. I was like, yeah, KRS was there, and he seemed to really like it, because Chuck was like, is this legit? Like, is this like a real, how did that event go? And I was like, it's awesome. It's like everything you want it to be.
Yeah, I've watched the YouTube videos and the induction ceremonies, and you've seen Curtis Blow and everything. It's just so cool, man. Yeah, to see them get recognized. Like I said, while they're still
Crazy
here, too.
Legs.
Yeah. Just, man, it's just, for a lot of us, it's our soundtrack to our life, our music, culture, and just to see it recognized. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame will only recognize, the major artists, but yeah, Kumo D's of the world are not going to get recognized like that. So we need a place for that. For them to get their honors. Yeah.
To your point, that's the other beautiful thing is the people that attend as fans, they might pay money for a ticket, or they might get in some other way. They're in awe. Like, they're standing there, like you're saying. These are people that, shaped their musical history. These are people that they listened to 35, 40 years ago. And they're like, wow, this person's standing in front of me now.
Right.
And those artists, some of them, like Queen Lisa Lee was there, and she broke down crying a few times. She's like, I can't believe that people, feel this way, and they're telling me to my face how much they love this. And it was so beautiful to be there, and like DJ Hurricane was there, and I think he was really moved to be inducted not as the Beastie Boys DJ, but as DJ Hurricane.
Right, who's had albums of his own, and right, it was, and he in his speech he said he was an MC first, like that's, and him and Jay helped shape the look of Run-D.M.C. So he's got a lot of fingerprints, I don't know how to word it, on the culture, besides
Absolutely.
just being the guy who DJ with the Beastie Boys for a good period of time. Man, I can't imagine what it's like to just be there, and I definitely want to give you a chance to talk about the website and your own artwork too. You talked about a little bit, stuff you've done with Chuck and everything, but yeah, talk about the website and how people could follow you online and get some of your art and view what you've done.
Well, that's the neat thing for me is that the lines have all been blurred. It started off as me just being a portrait artist. I moved to the eastern shore of Maryland, and I'd paint boats and I'd paint nautical themes, and I still love doing that. But I wanted to start paying tribute to my hip hop heroes, so I just started painting portraits. It never really occurred to me until much later that I should try to go to these shows, that these artists were still performing. Rakim came around all the time. I'm like, I should just go see him. And so I brought the work with me. And so the line was blurred when I started realizing my art could be my intro to meeting people. Because if I didn't have the art with me, I don't think I would go up to anybody. I would hang back in the back and I would enjoy the music and I'd leave.
Much different than a demo tape, right? Because they see enough of those. Like, all right, here's your demo. Okay, great. It's like, here's art. Here's actual art. This is me. Yeah, that's
well. Sometimes I would be really nervous, and my friends would like pull the artwork out for me, and they'd just hold it up, and then people would be on stage. Like there was one cool moment where I had a portrait of KRS-One. This was probably 10 years ago or more, and it was a charcoal drawing, and somebody else pulled it out of my folder for me because I was being too shy about it, and he held it up during the show, and he grabbed it during the show, flipped it over, and he had this big marker like on stage with him, and he tagged the back of it, and it's this beautiful like graffiti style autograph. It's probably 20 inches by like 35 inches. It's a huge thing, and he didn't do it on the artwork. So when I got home, I pulled the back off and I framed that instead of the artwork. But it was this moment where everything started making sense. I'm like, this is why I'm doing this. So yeah, the artwork is fun, but it's, for me, if I can get it in front of the artist and then maybe even get them to what I call collaborate by writing lyrics on there. So I have a collection of art now that's not only a portrait of the artist, and maybe I'll get a picture of me with them, but if they write lyrics on it, it's like, wow, they get it. So a couple people have been great about that. Master Ace, like, totally got it. So he wrote lyrics that he chose on two of my pieces, and he filled the space beautifully. Like, he wrote a couple bars on there.
That's awesome.
And spent time thinking about it. And Black Thought was the same way. Like, I had it in my pocket. I said, would you write these lyrics? And I pulled out the little piece of paper, and he like shook his head, and he was holding the artwork, but he like stared up in space for a second, and then he wrote what he wanted to write on there. And I'm like, that's so much cooler.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's so much better. And the interaction becomes like a real substantial connection. And it's not like I'm friends with these guys, but I feel like I've worked with them in the way, because I'm not a rapper.
Right.
So I don't have, I'm not going to work with them in any musical capacity, but I'm blurring the lines between the visual art and the musical art. And that's my contribution. So yeah, like, I mean, the website is sort of like an online portfolio, katzart.com, katzart.com. You can see a lot of the stuff that I've done, and a lot of my recent stuff's not even on there. I've been playing around with these old electricians boxes and doing portraits inside of these wooden boxes. It's hard to kind of explain, but that can all be seen on my Instagram. And that's at AJKATZART, AJ Katz Art. And that's been really rewarding too, because I wanted to do something where I was paying tribute to the lyrics. So I'll bust open like an old electrician's box, and I'll digitally remake the gauge so that it pays tribute to not only the artist but their lyrics.
That's crazy.
And the knobs turn, and sometimes you can actually interact with the box in some way.
That's something, man. Do you sell prints of any of these on your site, or is it just more just viewing the work?
Yeah, there's prints that are available of some of it. Some of it's one of one original, and because I have a lot, like I'm certainly willing to part with some things, and some things I'm like, nah, I want to keep that because that one's. But I've had shows, and I mean I don't know how much longer you want me to talk.
No, it's okay.
One of the things that happened to me last year was I had a show in Philadelphia. I was part of a show. It was Chuck D's collective called Mad Urgency, and we had a show at a gallery called the No Name Gallery in Chestnut Hill. And the show came down, and I got all my work back, but the gallery owner, Janine, decided she was going to keep putting the word out about our work to see if she could move some other things. And on Instagram, Spike Lee took notice of my Public Enemy artwork of this box that I made. And he's like, yo, is this for sale still? And I was like, oh my God. And so that's a really long story. I won't tell the whole thing, but he purchased the piece, and then he let me hand deliver it. So I brought it up to his studio in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. And that was an incredible experience. And while I was there, he invited me to the opening of his Brooklyn Museum show.
Wow.
In which he was going to include my artwork. So it was like, this is
surreal, man.
Insane. Yeah, it was really surreal. Jeez. And then he ended up getting another piece from me, and the same thing happened again. I went up a second time, just in the nick of time, to include the second piece, because he wanted me to do a Q-tip box. So I did a Q-tip portrait box. And while I was there, it was very surreal, because it was me and his assistant and Spike, and we're in this big empty studio because all of his work was already over at the Brooklyn Museum. And he goes, what did he say? Joni Mitchell wasn't wrong, or what's the line? And I was like, what are you saying, Spike? And he's like, you know that song. And he picks up this little remote control and plays the Q-Tip Janet Jackson collaboration.
Oh, right.
And we're just standing there listening to music together, and I was like, what's happening? Like, how did I get here? This is unreal.
And next thing you know, you're at a Knicks game, right? No, I'm just kidding. And you're sitting next to him courtside.
That's right. That's right.
Man, that's pretty cool. I mean, like you said, some of these little interactions turn into something that kind of exceeds any expectations. And your next thing you know, you're in Spike Lee's, this house or whatever. Seeing gallery pieces and
incredible,
right? And talking with Chuck and everything. And like I said, as the viewer in me, just seeing these in search of videos has really kind of made me feel like, even if I haven't actually been to that neighborhood, I felt like I saw, where my favorite rap group of all time came up, their neighborhood, and the stuff you've shown in these videos. And salute to all you guys for putting these together. And I guess what's next? What can we expect coming up? And anything you want to promote as far as websites or anything, feel free to do so.
I mean, I already shouted out my Instagram and my website.
There you go.
I'm super excited about this In Search Of series. The Delta Bravo crew and all of the people in that always inspire me to share more. And just this opportunity that I have to work with Nick Light and Frank, the cameraman, has been, I just fell into it. So I feel really lucky and fortunate. But we have a lot of content right now, and I know Nick is kind of sorting through it so that we can expect more Beastie Boys from LA stuff. He has in the works the In Search of Michael Benabib, which is going to be a lot of really cool photos in and around New York City, Manhattan, that Michael took between like 1988 and probably 1995. This treasure trove that he had, and it so generously let us look at it and use it with all the enthusiasm that you could hope for. So really just more of what we're doing. We're trying to build this channel on YouTube. So if anybody's listening to this episode, check out In Search Of. It's called Delta Bravo In Search Of on YouTube. That's our channel. And we're just having so much fun making these things. And the fact that there's something substantive at the end, this video, this 5 or 10 minute video that is kind of a record of our travels. Just hearing you say it back to us like, oh, I felt like I was walking with you. Like, that's it. There's that moment in the movie Almost Famous. I don't know if you know that movie.
Oh,
but
yeah.
when Jason Lee is like, that's the buzz. Like, he's like, that's it. Like, that's exactly what when you say I understand, or when you say I felt like I was with you, that's so meaningful. And that's what we're going for.
Yeah, and it was perfect timing too, because I just got through with the Run-D.M.C documentary on Peacock, and they do a little similar thing where they're going to the school and the basketball court where Run-D first started playing, and and I see that, and then coming out of that, I find your stuff on YouTube, and I'm like, wow, there's just so much here. It's just really cool to see all that, and even though I'm not personally there, physically there, but it definitely feels like I'm walking with you and seeing everything, and it just seems like everybody was very, very inviting to have you guys come down there and film that stuff. So yeah, thanks for doing the work you do, man, and I can't wait to see the next. I'm sure there's so much coming down the pike, like you just said. Definitely looking forward to seeing everything you guys are doing, and once again, big thanks for coming on the podcast, and everybody go check out katzart.com and find you on Instagram. You got so many great pictures and videos on there as well too.
Well, thank you for shining the light on this, because it's our passion. It's my passion. And I feel a little less like a nerd when people are like giving accolades and telling us they like it. Because, we do this regardless, but there's just a really passionate bunch of people who like sharing their expeditions, their travels, and what they found, and the cool stories that go along with it. So thanks for letting me
no doubt, man,
talk for a while about all of that.
Yeah, man, hip hop, Indiana Jones, like we were talking earlier. It's definitely like when I'm watching these videos, I'm thinking like, man, it's just the attention to detail, because like a lot of us nowadays, everything is attention deficit. We're not paying attention as much. We're all looking at our phones and stuff, and just to seeing things like that, and just kind of remembering neighborhoods and places, it just kind of nostalgic, and I definitely appreciate what you guys are doing, and yeah, man, this is awesome, taking this another trip with you and hearing everything you've been through and going through, and what's coming next. So definitely appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and salute to Delta Bravo and the In Search of videos, and of course everything else you're doing, man.
Yeah, and if I've been out to Chicago a handful of times, and I've crushed Chicago in a lot of ways. A lot of untouchable stuff, a lot of
there you go.
A lot of like John Hughes. People go out there all the time.
Oh yeah.
For that stuff.
Oh man, I just forgot. During
John
Christmas,
Hughes
we went to the Home Alone house. I'm not even a fan of the movie. I actually don't like the movie, but we went there on Christmas Eve or whatever. So yeah.
So I've been to where they filmed 16 Candles and Ferris Bueller's Day Off and all that, and there's a whole lane for that too. Yeah, man. I would love to link up with you in person sometime.
Yeah, man.
And we can actually hit some of these spots together.
Right.
One of my favorite things is this idea of connection, and now we're connected. So
there you go.
I appreciate it, and it's really part of the fun. It's really what makes it all worthwhile.
I'll see if we can get Common. I don't have his number, but I'll see if he's busy. And you come out here and Common, show us the spots. Where you're recording with no ID and everything. Yeah.
It's a good example. See, now I'm going to go down that rabbit hole.
There you go, man. Oh my God, I can even imagine like that first album. He's got the cup or whatever. Yeah, I'm sure that's some sort of iconic thing that I can't think of. Or Harold's Chicken in the background or something. Yeah.
You just lit the match, man.
There it is.
I'm gonna do the research.
There it is, man. Hey, Andy, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man. It was a pleasure having you on here, and just always, for me, it's always great to just talk about the old days. I should ask you this before I let you go, because I've been asking a lot of guests on here. 50 years of hip hop just ended. Is there a jump off point for you? Like mine was Lottie Dottie and then Crush Groove. Was there one for you that kind of sparked it for you?
Absolutely. I remember Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, Public Enemy, because I grew up in the suburbs in Maryland, and it was all of it. They just kind of burst onto the scene. I think the earliest part didn't make it into the suburbs, and the fact that MTV and Run-D.M.C, like you said, is one of your favorites. They're one of my favorites too. But Raising Hell, that wasn't even their first album, but when that came out, like everybody had it. And Bigger and Deffer, I know you were talking about Walking with a Panther, but Bigger and Deffer for me was like everything. And even like that cover of that's Andrew Jackson High School.
Yep. Yeah,
and
that's
we
one of those.
ran that down the same day we did the Hollis one, but that's a Glenn Friedman shot. That's Glenn. And I went to, when I turned 50 a couple of years ago, it just so happened, because it was on the heels of COVID, that they rescheduled the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Right.
And we were thinking, like, what should I do for my 50th birthday? My wife and I were driving along, and she's like, when did they reschedule it for? And she was looking on her phone, and she's like, October 30th, which was my 50th birthday. And I was like, oh, that's it. Like, we're going to go to Cleveland and see LL Cool J get inducted on my birthday.
That's awesome.
And we did. And the reason I bring it up is that they had the Audi 5000 that he's standing on the Bigger and Deffer cover at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They had fixed it all up, and it was looked like brand new.
That's crazy.
And this is also a Delta Bravo thing. Behind the glass, they had like a temporary display of artifacts from each of the inductees. And they had the boombox from the radio album cover. And I took a picture of it and I mashed that up. It was identical because it was the actual radio, but it was so cool. Like in everything we were just talking about the artifacts and like the archaeology piece of it, to see the actual Audi 5000 and to see the actual radio boombox from the radio album cover, it was full circle.
That's a hell of a birthday present, man. Seeing LL Cool J getting into the Hall of Fame, and then like seeing
and
all those artifacts.
everyone's all excited about the Foo Fighters and everybody, and I was like, nah, I'm here for LL Cool J.
I'm here for Uncle L.
Yeah, and Paul McCartney was there, and he performed with the Foo Fighters at the end. But I'll tell you what, LL Cool J puts on an incredible performance, and he had Eminem come out, and he had J-Lo come out. Right. It was really incredible. But I've always been a huge LL Cool J fan.
Now he's one of the all-time greats. And then last summer, I want to say was the Sunday after the Friday 50th anniversary hip hop celebration out in New York. I went to the concert here in Chicago. Was the LL tour was like Rakim was there, and the Roots were the backup band, which is bonkers. Like they could do a whole show by themselves, but they're the band. And then you've got Common came out, and Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh, Bone Thugs were there too, and I'm
incredible.
And my wife, who's never been to a hip hop show, knows nothing about it. She's standing there. I'm like, yeah, this is Rakim right now. This is the greatest. It's like this is LL. You're seeing like everything that I love all in one stage. This is bananas. So,
yes.
And he can do a show like none other. And salute to LL, man. He did a lot of Walking with Panther cuts, by the way. He did Nitro. I heard him do that. I was like, yeah, there you go, LL, do that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, when they play the song you're waiting on that you don't think you're going to hear, it's great. Yeah, so good.
Man, big up, man, for coming on the show here, man. Appreciate it. And once again, everybody make sure you check out Andy online and go to katzart.com and check out these In Search Of videos. You will not be disappointed. They are amazing. Man, thanks again for coming through, dude. I appreciate you.
Oh, likewise. This was awesome. I could probably talk for several more hours. So I'll shut up now and let you do your thing. Thank you.
No doubt, man. Big up to my man Andy Katz for coming on the show here. Really appreciate him giving me a background and kind of a behind the scenes and how they do those videos and so much more. And it was really, really cool not just to watch them on YouTube, but now to hear how they came about. They're incredible. Again, as I said, go on YouTube, type in Delta Bravo In Search Of. There's so much content in there, and there's a lot coming, so definitely stay tuned for that. And check out his site, katzart.com, KATZART.com, and definitely follow him on Instagram. He's a fun follow. There's a lot of cool videos and pictures and stuff that he's putting up there, so definitely big shout-out to Andy Katz for coming on. It was a lot of fun to talk to him, and there's probably so much more I could have bugged him about, but, This is the Infinite Banter podcast. So we talk a long time on here. There's no time limit. It's not like the old school wrestling matches. So you can keep going if you have to. I did want to bring up, because I didn't think of this until after I talked to Andy. I did do something similar to what he's done. I can't believe I forgot about this. I should have brought it up when I was talking to him, but I didn't remember it. I went to Minneapolis, St. Paul in 2019. My daughter was maybe like 3 months old, but we went, and I'm a big Prince fan. And I looked up online. I was just kind of thinking, like, well, what are some things that Prince did? Like, what are some Prince locations that we can go visit while we go there? Besides the obvious, go to Paisley Park, which we did not do because they don't allow kids under a certain age there. And, obviously with a little one, can't go. What are we going to do? Leave her in the hotel? Be bad parents? Like, oh, we'll be right back. Don't worry. We're just going to go to Paisley Park for a few hours. I'm sure you'll be all right. No, we didn't do that. So I've yet to go there. But I looked up a couple of other things that you can do, some spots and places, and two things I definitely made sure to check out. So the major one was going to First Avenue Club. and that's where they filmed Purple Rain, and he performed many times there. And it's a really cool spot. If you ever go to Minneapolis, on the wall, and I have it on my Instagram, I can probably pull it up and repost it. There's stars all along the wall on the two sides on both ends of the club. And it's got different groups that I assume performed there at one point or another. And so I'm geeked. I see like there's a Run-D.M.C star, and there's a Beastie Boys star, and there's like a Cypress Hill star. And of course, the main one is there's a Prince star. And I believe it was in gold. Most of them are like in silver, white paint. But Prince had the gold star, which he should have. And it was the closest to the door. So his is the easiest to find. It's almost like it starts with him and the rest kind of go down the block. And then if you go around the corner to the other side of the club, there's more there too. And I mean, they're from like the sidewalk to the top, almost to the roof. I mean, there's a lot up there. Really cool place to check out if you've never been there. But as far as like what Andy does is where you take an iconic photo and try to recreate the location or find that location. There's a famous picture of Prince when he's really young where he's standing in like a parking lot. But on the wall in the parking lot, there's this whole mural of just music notes. And I saw that picture and I was like, man, that'd be pretty cool. And it told me on this website where to find that corner. Not too far from the club there. So we went there and we kind of recreated. We stood where he stood and did all that, and it's still there. So I can't believe I didn't think of this when I was talking to Andy, but that's probably the closest I've ever been to doing what he does. And that was really cool to see because it's right there, not too far from that First Avenue Club. So anybody goes to Minneapolis, you could check it out. My wife took a picture, I took a picture, and again, maybe I should post these on Instagram just to kind of give them new life because of what I'm talking about here. But big shout out to Andy. Go check him out online. And I need to do some more of this stuff myself. I've always wanted to go to that school that he's talking about where LL's standing on top of the Audi with the red Kango on from the Bigger and Deffer cover. That's always been like one of my favorite covers, and I would love to go to that spot and see where that was. So big shout out to Andy Katz. Appreciate him coming on the show here, and definitely go check out those In Search Of videos on YouTube.
Yeah, what's up? This your boy, the legendary Cool Rock Ski from the legendary Fat Boys. I'm here on Infinite Banter, and we're going to rock the house. Yes, sir.
Time for you to leave, assholes.
That is Kirk Acevedo telling me it's time to go, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. But before I get out of here, a couple quick things. So I want to give props to A Tribe Called Quest. They made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Big salute to them. If I ever had to do a top 5 hip-hop groups list, for me personally, it's pretty I could rattle them off without even thinking. It's Run-D.M.C, Public Enemy, Beastie Boys, Wu-Tang Clan, Tribe Called Quest. And I believe all of them are in the Hall of Fame. Is Wu-Tang in? I got to look that up. I don't have the research in front of me, but I think all 5 groups now officially are in. And in my opinion, that's it. That's your 5. I mean, there's other groups that should be listed as well, but to me, those are the core 5 of as far as what I like and what I think are the best 5 groups in history are. Tribe Called Quest going to the Hall of Fame is just amazing, man, and I'm really happy for them. And I, obviously wish Fife was still here to be part of it, but that's going to be something. I'm definitely going to check out that ceremony to watch them get in. And it's also really cool to see Mary J. Blige got in, but definitely a thumbs down because somehow Sade did not make the cut and Eric B. and Rakim did not make the cut. Now look, I'm biased. Those are 2 of my favorite artists of all time, Rakim and Sade, bar none. As far as I'm concerned, if you are going to have hip-hop groups in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, how could you not have easily the most influential voice to ever do it, and who's considered by many to be the best to ever do it in Rakim? The fact that he's not in there, I feel like it's kind of a disservice to him. So he should be in there. I don't know how it works. I know they vote on it, but is there some sort of politics behind it? I don't know. And Sade, are you fucking kidding me? I mean, like first of all, her band is great. Her band should just be in there, let alone her. They made classics, timeless classics for years and years, decades. And she's one of the greatest singers of all time, in my opinion. So I don't even know what people are thinking of. I saw Journey got in or something like that. Like, okay, I mean, whatever. I know it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but, they've been letting in other genres for years, so we don't have to have that argument. Oh, it's not rock and roll. Like, okay, whatever. That argument is dead. So let's move on past that. I remember I got in an argument with some Kiss fan because Gene Simmons was talking shit about NWA getting in and how they don't belong in there. And I remember I got into it with this dude. And basically what I kind of told him was like, well, Kiss sucks. I mean, they shouldn't be in, so what do? They put on a bunch of makeup. They did some stupid shows. I don't remember them having any good music, but that's another topic for another day. Salute to Tribe Called Quest. So congrats to Q-Tip, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, Jarobi, and rest in peace, and now a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the one and only Fife. Big congrats to those guys, man. Definitely cool to see that. And one more thing before I get out of here. So I'd mentioned at the beginning of the episode, O.J. Simpson passed away. I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff. Whatever. That's not really why I brought it up. But the first thing that popped in my mind, so in 2019, my daughter was born. Her name is Melody. But for a couple months, like anybody else who's had a kid, you start bantering about, pun intended, some names that you might think of to name your kid, right? I mean, you don't want to be there the day she's born and struggling to come up with a name. So you want to have some idea, at least a couple in the, in the bank that you might go with. And a name I really like is Olivia. And there's a lot of Olivia. She's in daycare. There's a couple of Olivias in there. It's a popular name. It's a name that's kind of making a comeback, like LL. So it's definitely out there. And I was like, man, that'd be a cool name. I definitely thought about it. And then as I thought about it, I started to think, well, her initials would be OJ, because my last name starts with a J. And I immediately said, we can't do it. I don't want her to be known as OJ because of who that guy is. So a really cool name got sidebarred or crinkled up and thrown in the trash because of that dude. He ruined O's for everybody that have a last name that starts with a J. So that's your legacy, dude. I mean, there's a lot of other things he's known for, but that's the first thing that pops up in my mind. Like, oh, yeah, we can't name her Olivia unless I change my last name. Another thing that popped in my head about that guy, God, there's so much stuff. The last time I was in Vegas, I stayed at Palace Station, which is kind of off the strip. And I remember saying at the time, like, hey, this is the spot where OJ got, arrested from. And, his stuff was in that room or something probably. He's trying to steal his stuff back. That was at Palace Station. If it's still, I don't even know if it's still there. I haven't been to Vegas in like 10 years. So it's the first thing I thought of when I was there. This is the OJ Hotel. This is the one he got in trouble at. So it's enough of my OJ nonsense. All right, that's it for me. Big up to Andy Katz for coming on the Infinite Banter podcast, which you can find on all platforms. Rate and review the show. Check out the Spotify playlist and the poll questions. Go on YouTube. Type in Infinite Banter for a few of the episodes that are on there. There's select episodes available and clips and such. And you can find it on social media at Infinite Banter Podcast. All right, that's it for me. Once again, big salute to Andy Katz. Check him out at katzart.com and go on YouTube and check out the Delta Bravo series, In Search Of. You'll definitely have a good time watching those. All right, I'm out of here until I do another one of these. I'm out.
Hey, asshole, get off the road.
Being on the Infinite Banter with my man Mark has been a pleasure.